Hi everyone, today is a continuous series where I share with you how I do the PBO limits, the curve optimizer and the curve shaper on a ASRock motherboard. And I've done two series beforehand, and if you guys missed that content, right, it's based on ASUTech board and the MSI motherboard. And if you have those board and having the 800 series like the X870E or the B850 motherboard, you can follow those two content, but please go accordingly to the MSI to MSI board, ASU to ASU board. Okay, don't get mixed up. And all the figures that is punched in there, right, be the PBO limits, the curve optimizer and the curve shaper, right, you can make use of it. It's safe to use. And as for today, right, having a deep dive on the most famous board, which is outsold in all the brands on the X870E category, which is none other than the ASRock X870E Nova. There are tons of speculation out there, especially in Reddit, surfacing a lot of problems with this board that is killing the processor known as the 9800X3D. Now, for today, I will share with you, okay, it's just a prevention, not a solution. So do take that in mind. And for your information, right, I have this board on my main rig right now, and it's running on a 9950X3D without any issues. And I've been running the board ever since it's with me, thanks to ASRock, from day one till now. In fact, it's before the official sales date. I've been using that till right now. There are no problems with both of the processor that I had, which is the 9950X or the 9950X3D. I retired my 9950X. Instead, I've been using the 9950X3D. Anyway, today's topic is more about this 9800X3D. Will this board kill this processor? Well, I would say that if you practice cautiously, and these are the prevention that I will show you what you can take and to have a prolonged usage on the processor on this motherboard. And I'd like to thank again, first of all, ASRock to have provided another set of X870E Nova, because I wouldn't want to take out my main board off from my case. And also to AMD Singapore to have provided this 9800X3D processor, which is actually a bin processor, meaning to say top notch, to do the content for today. And also to King Banks, the two sets of RAMs. Now for today, I will just run short as a night. I won't be showing you the 6000 MHz with CL28 and also the 6800 CL32. Instead, I'll make use just straight to the 6800, just to show you the SoC voltage and such. So I'll skip all this, but just to aim on this. By the way, both of these are 48GB kit. Any RAMs that I plug into this board, right, it will work. Okay, that's the amazing thing about Kingsbank. So let's begin. Let's start off with the very basic, and I will touch on the issue where some of you have sent me email and asked me questions on Reddit and such, stating that, hey Cleo, I have this board and there are news regarding about this board killing my processor, which is the 9800X3D. Now, I will touch on that, but for now, right, first thing to do when you set up your system in a case and ready for installation of Windows, do not hurry up to install that. First thing you need to do, update the BIOS. At all costs, right, for my practice, right, I will do that. Just head down to ASRock official website under the Nova X870 motherboard. Click on support, click on BIOS, and you'll see all these BIOS over here. Take the latest one. Make sure it's not a beta BIOS. Okay, you wouldn't want a beta BIOS running while you're doing your applications or playing your games. Make sure that it's fully verified, certified. Okay, a full firmware. So download this and do the BIOS flashback, or even in UEFI to update your BIOS. I will not touch on that. For more instructions regarding on how to do your BIOS, right, make sure you check the instruction manual, which you can pull over here, which is listed here. See? So it teach you all the steps on how to do your BIOS update. Okay, once you have done this, right, first instinct, clear CMOS, boot to UEFI. After you've done the BIOS update, set the cooling solution of your system. be whether you have case fans or such, make sure you have calibrate them properly. As for me, right, I'm using an open bench. The only fans that I have are the radiator fans on my liquid AIO. So I will just set my radiator fans, which is plugged to the CPU fan 1 header, to performance. Then on this motherboard, there is a special BRM fan on the rear to cool down your BRM. I will scroll down, which is actually the MOS fan 1 setting. I'll set this to performance. Next, to ensure that your liquid AIO, if you're using liquid AIO, make sure you set the pump to run at full speed. So I'll set this to PWM full speed. Okay, if you have custom water loop and you have another pump, right, plug to this W_pump header, right, you can just set this to. Okay, now I always run pump at full speed. You can choose to customize how you want to run your pump. You can set it, lower, as in like lower RPM, but make sure it's consistent. You can set it to around 80%. Reason for this, right, you want consistency on your pump. Alright, once you've done this, right, now this is the part where I will talk about what precaution you can do not to fright your 9800 X3D. As usual, for someone new, right, you will just say that, oh, okay, I am just going to set the RAM profile, okay, which are my DDR5. I will pull this to export. Once you've done this, right, you will just save the settings and you will install Windows. Kindly do not do this. Let me show you why. Now, as you can see, I've done nothing to the UEFI except for pulling the RAM profile. Let me just save and boot to Windows. Okay, as an illustration. Something to be mindful of when you are doing any configuration on UEFI, right? Once you save the profile, it will take some time to boot, as UEFI will do the motherboard will do the RAM training cycle again, recognizing whatever configuration you have done. Then once that checked, it will load into Windows. And for Windows, right, it's also another section whereby it will verify whatever settings you have done in UEFI and to calibrate to the scheduler in Windows. As you can see over here, it's loaded. It takes some time, right? Probably about 30 to 40 seconds. Then it will load to this screen where Windows will take all the configuration what you have done on UEFI and you will load into Windows. Now, back to the question where I mentioned that do not just pull your DDR5 profile and install Windows, okay? Because you need to know or in control of what the system is doing, which I will show you right now, just by setting the expo profile. Take a look at what happened when I do the run on Cinebench and such, which I will talk about all this application later, but I just want to show you something. Okay, I'm just going to pull Ryzen Master. Take note on the CPU power. Now, recommended for the power usage from AMD website, which is here. Okay, this one, the 9800 X3D. Oh, I should do this. Yep. Go to the website, take down the readings. As in, like, open up the general specification, take down what is the CPU power recommendation, which is the TDP 120 watt, right? With this say, right, having in mind 120 watt, this processor will operate best max at 120 watt and not above it. Take a look at what happened. Okay, I'm just going to run this. Okay, no, I should have adjusted this properly. Okay, let me just adjust this properly for you first before I continue, which is down here. And whatever I'm doing right now, right, I'll explain to you later what's going on. So we can ignore what I'm loading right now. I just want to show you the stats and everything, just to let you have a clearer picture of what's going on. So bear with me with this placing the item properly and such. Now, as mentioned to you, recommended CPU power is at 120 watt, right? So this is where you should be looking at, the CPU power. The CPU power means the core that is supposed to use the current, which is 120 watt, the 8 cores. Okay, this is actually what it meant by over here, the TDP recommended wattage is 120. Now, you have pulled the the Expo profile, right, on your RAMs, and you start to install Windows. This is actually what happened when you run on the background. Okay, I'm just going to run a demo. See what happened? The CPU power is running at 138 watt. So you unknowingly just enable Expo profile on your RAMs and you install Windows, and it's running at this. Now, for a short period of time right now, no problem. But if you're going to use this prolonged, right, it will definitely hurt your processor because you have went above the specs. And another thing is that, taking a look at the SoC, right, now over here might be 1.19 volt, same as whatever that's put in hardware info. But on IDA, right, take a look. Oh, over here, 1.216 is above 1.2. Sometimes it might spike, and it might just go 1.2 something. So this is something that you need to take care of before you install Windows, and make sure that you do not hurt your processor. So this is actually a no-go, and this is not a no-go. And how do you actually counter all this before installing Windows? You can do this. Okay, let me just stop all this. On the UEFI page, which I will take you to, the steps that I'm showing you right now is for you to take precaution not to fry your processor. Okay, the first instinct, recap again, update your BIOS. Next thing, pull your RAM profile. And these 3 steps, the following 3 steps are the most important steps, which will prevent your processor from getting hurt. And I often like to do this, be it Intel or AMD, right? I like to do this before anything else, especially on ASRock Board, as I know that ASRock Board are very aggressive. Go to the OC tweaker where you pull your RAM Expo profile, which is this. Now, go to your SoC. As you can see here, it's 1.2. And as I show you, right, on the stat, it's pulling 1.2. And if you spike, right, it will go 1.2, it's like 1.216 or such. To prevent that, right, you can set this SoC. I know that my RAMs can take 1.15. Okay? But some of you have higher RAM capacity and higher bus speed and such. A safer gauge, set it to 1.18. In general, all RAMs should be under, by right, in general, all the RAMs should be under 1.15 if you can run. But sometimes, due to the fact that the capacity, the high capacity, like from 32 to 64 and such, right, or 98, right, you need higher SoC voltage. So to safeguard that, right, inclusive of having high bus speed like 6800, which I'm having right now, or 8000 and such, set this to 1.18. Make sure that it's set this way so that it will not go beyond, though you have set this right, the max it will just go is 1.2 and not above it. Okay, this is the one thing that you need to take note of. And why do you have to set the SoC? Well, let me just explain. The RAMs itself have a chip called IMC. Okay, it communicates with your processor, which there's another chip called PMIC. And if you watch motherboard reviews, right, where it tell you the power phase like 12 plus 2 plus 1, the 12 is for the core, the 2 is for your SoC voltage, which is this. So what's hurting the processor, right, in fact, is overvolt on the SoC voltage. So with this say, right, you want to safeguard, make sure you set it below 1.2 on the safe side. Next thing, you saw the CPU power, which I show you on Ryzen Master. Okay, it's drawing 138 watt when you run. To prevent this, head down all the way to external voltage setting. Set this to offset. Okay, and you can pump all the way -100, which interpreted 0.1 volt. And this is the only offset that can be done on ASRock board and not any other boards. Any other boards, right, you can only go -50 watt. I mean -50 milliwatt. Oops. Okay, for some interesting. For some reason, alright, only on ASRock, which most of the time I've been using ASRock board. So I always set this before I install Windows, just to lower down the voltage required from the processor. Now, let me explain what does this offset does. Your motherboard have a cap limit to provide the V-core voltage to your processor, which is at 1.35. Okay, assuming that right now your processor need to run at 5 gig, so you request from your motherboard. Then your motherboard, without thinking and such, right, you just pump, because this is actually default 1.35. So your processor is eating up 1.35. Maybe not everything, but this is actually what it meant. Having to offset, right, the motherboard will calibrate as in like recalculate, saying that okay, the processor is asking me to provide the current and the requirement is running at 5 gig. Okay, I'll calculate. Alright, this processor does not need 1.35. In fact, it needs only 1.2. So it will provide 1.2 volt to your processor. So this is what I meant by why I always set it offset before I install Windows. Next thing, the load line calibration. As you can see over here, right, it's set to auto. We have no idea which load line calibration is using. Level 1 is being the highest. Sorry, level 1 is being the lowest. Level 2 is being in the middle. And level 3 is the highest. Just now what you have watched on the Ryzen Master, right, which is drawing 138 watt, I suspect that it's actually on load line. I mean on the load line calibration level 3. Okay, though here is written level 2. I would fix it, set this to level 2. Okay, now I'm just going to save this profile, but I'll rerun again as a night the Cinebench to show you the results. So just as a reminder, before you install Windows, make sure you set your SoC voltage and the offset, and of course the load line calibration to level 2. Okay, you've seen over here, I've just recap everything. So this is done. Next will be the SoC voltage. Where is it? Oh, over here. Okay, so you put your profile, export profile, done your SoC, V-core, you're in total control. Okay, giving how much voltage, inclusive of having to control on the V-core to your processor and the pulling of voltage. Now, I'm just going to save and to load to Windows. Take a look at what happened. And every time when you do the settings on UEFI, right, the motherboard itself, when you boot up, it will take some time to do the RAM training timing again and such. This might take 30 to 45 minutes. Sorry, 30 to 45 seconds. Once that's done, right, it will load into Windows. And again, Windows has a session where you see the hourglass that will verify the settings on the UEFI, and you will plug into your Windows scheduler. So that's actually what happened. I think I did repeat talking about this, right? Anyway, you will hear me keep on saying this just to kill the dead air or the silence. Alright, right now it's loaded into Windows. Take a look at what happened. Going to take some time. Again, I will explain all the application that I uploaded in a short while. I just want to show you the stats first to prevent you from damaging your processor. Right, I'm just going to load Ryzen Master. Hopefully you will pick up and with no errors. Okay, good. This is done. Now I have set my SoC voltage to 1.18. Okay, so I'm just going to pull all the stats that's required and the Cinebench to run the benchmark together with firmark. And again, I'll explain to you why I'm using all this application. So right now, erase everything. Just take note on what are the prevention that you can do to to prevent your processor from damaging. Okay, this is over here. Now, as I mentioned to you, I've set the SoC to 1.8. See, this is 1.18, slightly above, but it will not go 1.2. So you don't have to worry that it will be 1.2 and above. You have locked it down to 1.18. It will only go slightly up. Even if you push up, right, max it will go is 1.2 and you will not go above that. I can ensure you this. Now, let me run and take a look at the CPU power. This right now, instead of 138 watt, is 108 or maybe 119. Okay, sorry, 118 or 119, which is according to the AMD specification recommended voltage. So right now, you can ease your mind to install your Windows. Alright, now assuming you have already set all this, and to continue installing Windows, okay, make sure you do all those settings first, as I show you, to prevent this mishap, like overpowering on the SoC or overpowering on the overdrawn on the SoC and overdrawn on the CPU power that will hurt your processor. Now, once you have done this, right, you have installed Windows and Windows is loaded. What are the applications you need in order to fine-tune, like making use of the Precision Boost Overdrive and such? These are the applications that you will need. Okay, I will just close this. Oh, before talking about the application, I forgot to mention. My bad. Once Windows is loaded, okay, first thing to do, check on your device manager, which you can see here. I right click on my start and click on device manager. Make sure that all this device over here, right, is without exclamation mark. Anyway, first time when you install ASRock on an ASRock motherboard for Windows, right, there will be a prompt. Okay, let me just minimize all this so I won't confuse you. Now, before you install the application and start to tweak or start to play games and such, right, make sure first thing is that to check on the device manager, make sure that all these are clear. And as mentioned to you, right, when you install Windows on ASRock board on the 8000 series, the X870E or the B850 series, right, there will be a prompt on the lower right hand corner asking you to install all the drivers. It's just a one click yes and it will install everything. Now, if you miss that, do not worry. You can go to the website again on the official motherboard. Sorry, official website of this motherboard. Go to the support page and click on download. And these are the drivers that's required. Install as necessary so that there won't be any exclamation mark. So this is the first 10. Next is the AMD chipset driver. Install this. Oh, by the way, all this that I mentioned, right, the application and such, right, I will leave the URL in my description so that it's easier for you. Install this into your system. Then follow the instruction. It might ask you to reboot. Just reboot and load this application known as the AMD Software Adrenaline Edition. Okay, click on the top right, manage updates. This will prompt. Double check under installed make sure that these two applications are up to date. If it's not up to date, right, you will have this download bucket icon under the info icon. Download it, install it. Once that's done, good to go. Final stage, update Windows with all the security patches, the antivirus protection and such. Because some of these, right, are critical updates, especially for NetFrame and such. So make sure you do that. Once you've done this, right, there are no updates. Okay, you can start to fine tune the system or your processor. But before you fine tune, you need application. And the application as follow. You will need Cinebench R23, okay, which already done, or you can use R24, up to you. Next will be FurMark. Now FurMark is additional step which I will show you. Reason being, right, I have not used a discrete graphic card. I only making use of the integrated graphic. So I want to stress on the integrated graphic on the processor along with the 8 cores on this processor. And you might be saying, Cleo, you're showing me all these settings, right? Will it work once I configure it and to plug my graphic card? Yes, it will be. Not a problem, as all my settings, right, are moderate. It's not aggressively, pulling too much value or pushing too much value. Everyone in general can use. Then followed by Ryzen Master. Okay, this is needed. I'll explain to you why. You will need AIDA64 to pull the stats and hardware info to show you the base clock and the boost clock of this processor during the Cinebench run and Reaver tuner. Now, why do I actually have to install this? Let me explain. All this application. As mentioned, Ryzen Master, it will show you this is by default. Okay, I only configured the offset, the load line calibration, and the SoC. I've done nothing but only those, and also to pull the expo profile. And all these settings over here, right, are by default, which will require later. And in the meantime, during the benchmark run, right, it will show you the CPU power, how much it's been drawing. For Cinebench, I need not have to say stress on the processing speed. Stress on the processor, the 8 cores, followed by FurMark. As mentioned to you, right, testing on the integrated graphic together with the 8 core processors. And for stats, right, I will pull AIDA64. And you'll be wondering, hey Cleo, how come you got 2 stats over here? Well, this is something that ASRock had to correct. Based on the fact that I find out some of the stats when I pull either on hardware info or AIDA, right, they don't match. Things like the SoC socket. Right now it's actually 1.17, right? Which is wrong. See, I've set it to 1.184. And hardware info is showing over here, which is 1.17, which is incorrect. So that's the reason why I pull 2 stats. And some of the stats on AIDA, right, it doesn't show. So I have to pull on hardware info. Okay, showing on FurMark. Things like, okay, for example, the VRM temperature. It doesn't show over here. It only show the chipset. And this chipset, right, is on the second chipset, which is this. As a X870 motherboard, right, you have 2 chipsets. It doesn't show over here. So that's the reason. And I hope that ASRock can, do some correction on your BIOS update and make sure that, it does reflect on both. Now, how to pull the stats on AIDA64? I'll start off with this. It's quite simple. When you install this application, right, click on the OSD. Okay, right now it's disappeared. So click on the OSD, this will appear. And how do you pull these stats? Do a right click, click on configure. And it will show you a list. Okay, gonna take some time. Now, in order for you to load the stats over here, right? Take for example, you want to show the time. Okay, just check on it. Take a look at your overlay. When you click on apply, see, the time will show. Alright, so this is actually how it works. Now, as for hardware info, Okay, to show on firmware, of course you will need hardware info, that's for sure. Alright, and how to show this overlay, you will need to install this application called River Tuner. Just to show you, now this is off, you can't see the stats, right? And this is on. This River Tuner is work hand in hand together with hardware info. See? And make sure you check on this on screen display field. If you don't check it right, or you don't enable it right, it's very hard for you to read. See? So at all times I will just do this. So this is actually how you do the overlay on firmware, and how to pull this stat, make use of hardware info. Take for example, let's say you want to show, let's say, what to show? Okay, let's see. Okay, the L3 clock. Let's say you want to show this over here. Do a right click, click on OSD RTSS setting. Check on show value and check on show label. So once this is done, right, see, it will show over here. Okay, probably you can see here, I'll change the color. See? So we did say, right, you need to align to the lines which are already done. So to align this, right, all is needed is just to click on this line over here, and you can start to put on the line. See, it drops over here. Okay, probably I put 22, line 22. See, it shows you the L3 clock. So this is how you pull the information to show on the overlay. Okay, as this I mentioned, done. Now the steps to tune. You know how to configure all this, to show the sets and such. Now to do the configuration, as in how you're going to set the PBO and such. First thing, take down the default recommended specs from AMD, which is over here. Oh, by the way, all this URL, right, will be in my description, so it's easier for you to access. If I have not mentioned that to you guys, so sorry about this. Now, on AMD official website, pull the processor specs, which is 9800X3D, expand this general specification, take down all the specs that's needed. Like this is very important, the TDP, and it happened that I've done up a very nice chart. Okay, let me just erase all this, as I was actually doing a dry run before I do this content. Okay, right now you know that the default TDP recommended voltage to draw is 120. So the CPU power to be drawn is 120. As you can see here, recommended. Okay, base clock 4.7 gigahertz. Boost clock 5.2 gigahertz. The rest won't have like the scores and such, because this is actually pulling off the recommendation. Now for PBT, TDC and EDC, your configuration on UEFI right now is only on default. You have not done the curve optimizer, you have not done manual PBO limits and such. So when you pull out Ryzen Master, right, or launch my Ryzen Master, it will tell you the default, as in like the PBT, the TDC and EDC. So with this said, I will take down the readings again. PBT 162, TDC 120. Okay, so this is 162 watt, TDC 120 ampere, and the last EDC 180. Now with this say, right, you will need to take down the default score before you do any tuning. So right now I'm just going to run, as you can see here, right, default. Okay, no curve optimization, no curve shaper. I will just run and to take down the readings. Okay, of course these are the same. 162 watt, 120. Default is actually this. Okay, I'll take down all this reading once after the 10 minutes throttle run, and I'll talk about I'll take the readings and to talk to you on the last 3 minutes of the run. So here we go. the last 2 minutes or so, I'll take down the readings before the scores and when this is stopped. So right now, take note, this is by default. Okay, I've not done any curve optimizer or curve shaper. First, with the CPU temperature, looking over here is 73 degrees Celsius. This is 72. I'll take it 73 degrees Celsius. Okay. The motherboard temperature over here is 43 and over here is 43. Okay, which is 43. VRM, as mentioned, either I can't pull. I can only depend on this hardware info, which is 46. Then on the 2 DIMM slot, or should I say my DDR5 RAMs, one is 39, the other is 38. And over here, both are 39. So I'll just put it 39. Round off, which is easier. Okay, same goes to this. And the M.2, this is 33 degrees and this is 33 degrees. Okay, fair enough. Now, for the CPU power drawn, it's at 117 to 118 or 120. Okay, I will take it as 118 most of the time as I look at it. See, it's 118 or 119. So I just put it, okay, probably I'll put 119. As you can see, the power drawn, right, is not, you know, very drastic. As compared, if I don't configure as what I've shown you, right, it will go 138 degree, 138 watt. So right now 119, and between that, right, it's good. Or should I say below the recommended, slightly below the recommended AMD specs. Now looking at the boost clock and the base clock, okay, 5040. Okay, I'll say around 5046. Okay, so I'll just put 5046 gigahertz. And as for the boost clock, 5215. Okay, 5215 gigahertz. And I'll take the scores in a short while. Now, taking a look at the graph itself, right, there is a reason why I place over here. As you can see, right, there are dips in between. It's showing me that it's inconsistent, whereby the processor is trying to pull and pull and pull, up and down and up and down. Now, this is not going to be very healthy if you play games or such, or even load programs, because at a certain time, right, when it spikes, right, your system might crash, or your game might crash, your application might crash. But in general, by default, right, it's not so drastic. Okay, it still will crash, but not so drastic. Okay, looking at the scores, 21733. Okay, 21733. All right, now this is all the default stats. Now I can start to play with PBO2 and the curve optimizer and such. So I'll just boot into UEFI, closing all this. Bear with me, I know this is rather lengthy. The objective is to have better performance, lower down the temperature. Okay, that's the reason of the main game of setting the PBO limits and the curve optimizer and the curve shaper. And rest assured, what I've done on UEFI, right, it's in general, everyone can use, not an issue. Loading into UEFI, starting off with the advanced. Okay, over here, go to AMD overclocking, accept. First thing to do, enable this SoC uncore OC mode. This got to do with the infinity fabric of your memory to communicate with your processor, telling it, saying that, hey, please max out my performance. So just do this. You can actually read over here, it does tell you run at the maximum specification frequency at all times. Okay, Then go to Precision Boost Overdrive. Set this to advanced. Now, please pay attention on this. As you know, right now, it's actually on auto. That's why you have all those PPT, TDC, EDC settings, which is down here, which I already taken down from Ryzen Master. You can leave it as auto, up to you. But for me, right, I personally would like to have full control of the system. So I will just punch in manually. And on the internet, a lot will ask you to do motherboard. Okay, either set to auto or motherboard. Now for auto, I'm not so worried because this is default base spec of the AMD recommended. But else, if you do, if you are to place motherboard, right, this is being controlled by the ASRock brand, as in like the AIB brand, where they can set the configuration and you will just use their configuration. For me, right, I wouldn't use their configuration. Instead, I'll use my own configuration. Or should I say, having total control of the configuration. Now, I'm not going to touch on how you're going to set the the PPT, TDC, and EDC. I'll just use the standard, so everyone will have on the equal page. As you can see here, right, I pull the PPT, TDC, and EDC from Ryzen Master over here. I will punch in all these figures, starting off with the PPT, which is 162. So over here, I'll just put 162. Now, do not leave it 162, right? If you key in this way, right, it's going to be incorrect. It will load very slowly. Reason being, right, take a look at this. This is in milliwatt. In order to make it watt, you will have to add 3 more zero. This will tell the system, your motherboard, saying that, hey, I've set this to 162 watt. Okay, followed by the TDC, 120 ampere, 120 ampere, 3 zeros again. And next is the EDC, and EDC is 180 ampere. So I set this to 180 ampere. Oops, 180, 3 zeros. Okay, next section will be the Precision Boost Overdrive Scaler Controller. Now I know that out there are a lot of heroes. Okay, I call them, the inverted commas heroes. They will ask you to set manual and set it to 10 times. Now please look at here. Override the AMD default silicon health management to potentially achieve higher sustained frequency under CPU load. It means to tell me, alright, what it means is, in fact, you will bypass all the AMD default specification, recommended specification. You just bypass it. You just want the system push whatever V core to your processor. Now, having higher V core, right, it could drive up the voltage, and that will damage your processor in no time. I wouldn't advise you guys to touch this at all to set to 10x. You can set it to 1x. Okay, this is safe. Other than that, right, pushing it high, right, I wouldn't recommend. In fact, it's best leave it as auto. Don't touch. CPU boost clock, yes, you can do that, not a problem. You can set to positive, set it to 175 or maybe 200 megahertz more. Maybe you say whatever clock that you've done, right, you will just plus 200. But I find this is redundant. You are pulling more wattage. Now for gamers, this is good. Okay, but for me, right, I am a person that does not like to push the processor too much. I like stability. I enjoy using a system that is stable. So I will just leave this. You guys can do this, alright, by all means. Anyway, the result what I'm going to show you later, right, it's about the same when you, not say about the same. This is better when you run my configuration. Okay, that's for sure. But it's just that I do not want to stretch my processor. I just want to prolong the life of my processor. So with this said, right, I will set this to disable. Okay, I will not touch this. Now, coming to the section on this two, curve optimizer and curve shaper. What does curve optimizer and curve shaper do? Okay, let me just explain. Previous benchmark, I'm running on this current line, which is by default. implementing curve optimizer, you are lowering down the current, the whole line, right? And I will set this line as -20. Okay. All core, negative magnitude, 20. Now, some of you will say that, hey, Q, I can do 30, I can do 40, I can do 50. Let me explain to you why do I only set to 20. If you set it to 50, imagine that your processor, right, is pulling an elastic band, okay? And your elastic band has stretched all the way to 50 cm. At the beginning, you can run. Okay, at one end, your processor is pulling, the other end is just nailed to somewhere, right? Stationary, 50 cm. Okay, and as mentioned to you at the beginning, you can run, not a problem. But when this is pulling, right, all the time for a period of time, 3 months, 6 months down the road, what happened to the tension of the elastic band? It will deteriorate. And what will happen then? Your processor at the other end, right, might be shaking, struggling because it doesn't have a consistent foundation. So this will cause instability and making your processor unstable. And that's where you hit crashes and such. And come to the extent, if you use even longer period of time, the elasticity is already deteriorated, okay, degraded. And what if it snaps? Your processor will go dead. Alright, so that's the reason. Since the very beginning of PBO settings, right, starting from the 5000 series, right, there is a range from 10 to 30. I will just set it to 20. So this setting here is for everyone. You can just use this setting and run. It will be safe. And you will run smoothly without any issue. So do this. And some of you might have the question, hey Cleo, can I do it to per core? The story come back again of the elasticity of the elastic band. What's the point of coming to this dashboard here? You want to pull much more, right? You might set some to 15, some to 20, some to 30, or maybe irregularly. You're doing the same thing as what I mentioned to you. You're pulling the elastic band, right, to the extent it will just lose it, integrity. You will just snap and your processor will be dead. So I wouldn't advise you to use this, but if you are those challenging enough, right, every year you change processor, you wouldn't care your processor, processor being dead, right, you can do this, no problem. But I will not do this. I will just do all core. Now, another question, a very silly question that comes, I'm not saying that, sorry, I should take back my word. My bad. It's not silly, but it's just that, purchasing something that you do not understand, whereby this processor, right, is only 8 core. It only have one CCD. It doesn't have dual CCD like 9950X or 9950X3D. If you have that, right, you can set per CCD, not a problem. See, when you put per CCD, right, it's just like you put per core. You only have one CCD 0. For the 9950X or the 9950X3D, right, you will have CCD 0 and CCD 1. So we can make use of this. I would just say that, forget about this. Just do all core. Since it's only an 8 core, set it to 20. Now, this is done. Next is Curve Shaper. Oh my god, there's so many figures down here. Not to worry. Bring you back to the chart. Now, you have done the Curve Optimizer -20. Now you have another additional line known as the Curve Shaper. In fact, Curve Shaper is similar to Curve Optimizer, where you have another line over here to pull down lower current. But instead of having the whole line down, right, you have points over here. As you can see, you have minimum frequency, low frequency, mid frequency, high frequency, and maximum frequency. And each of this section here, the frequency itself, you have 3 thermal points. Okay, what do I mean by thermal points? Take a look at over here. So you have minimum, where you have low temperature, mid temperature, high temperature. For low frequency, you have low temperature, mid temperature, and high temperature, and etc. It's always coming in sets of 3 points for every frequency. So having said this, right, back to the chart, you have another stretch, but instead of stretching the whole thing down, you can gradually set it so that at a certain frequency, let's say at 4.5 gig, right, it's pulling much more magnitude with negative 15. As the higher frequency you go, right, 4.8, 5 gig and so, right, you need to have a stable current. So that's why you have all these points over here to push up the current. Else if you stay 15, right, all the way until the last point, right, is struggling. I'm grabbing, it's like, you know, imagine that you're running, right, you are grabbing air, right. If it's all the way, you know, having 15, right, you feel the tension. But imagine people supply you with oxygen, you will feel that, oh, you have more stamina to run and such. So this is actually what it meant by gradually setting a fine-tune point. And with this say, right, these are valid points where you have minus 15, minus 10, minus 5. So over here, right, I will not start with the minimum frequency or the low frequency. The action takes place on the medium frequency. Okay, so with this medium frequency, right, there are 3 points as mentioned to you. See, 1, 2, 3. Enable this. Do it slowly. You don't have to hurry things. Set it negative, and this is 15. Okay, do the rest, which is the same on their thermal points or temperature point. See, I already done one set. Starting from the mid frequency, enable, negative, double check, 15. Again, repeat, check, make sure it's done properly, then followed by setting the high frequency. Again, do the same steps, but this time instead of putting 15, you put 10. Okay, do the same. Okay, until you have 3 sets. This is done. Double check everything. Okay, from the high frequency, yep. So this you probably have to look to the left, look to the right to make sure everything is done properly. Now, coming to the max frequency. Okay, the last 3 points. Do the same. Enable, negative, put to 5. Okay, you have done. These are all the settings. As mentioned to you, you can make use of, not a problem. Everyone can use. So as you can see, right, I've set the curve optimizer, I've set the curve shaper, and I've also set my own. It's like I put in the PPT, TDC, and EDC value by my own. So right now I know that I have total control of the whole system, that you will not go haywire. Just make sure that you don't set your PBO limits, right, to motherboard. Okay, this is avoidable. This is to avoid. Now I'm just going to save and to share with you the settings that I've done and to show you the results on the 10 minutes run. Now, as mentioned to you, right, this is a very aggressive board. So the temperature might drop a bit, but somehow I feel that the characteristic of this ASRock, right, having to do the PBO limits, right, is not so drastic as compared to other boards. But mind you, this is actually a good board. It's very rock stable, and to me it's actually very rock stable because I've been using it to do content and such, and to run, applications. But of course not on this 9800X 3D. I only tested this for a couple of weeks, but most of the time I've been using a 9950X or the 9950X 3D. In fact, right now it's 9950X 3D when it first launched, because I was like having the hype. I was like, oh, fantastic, it can do both work and games. So that's the reason why I purchased that and to change that. Now, this is the part which is coming interesting. I'm saying that whatever settings I've done, right, you won't see any drastic change on the temperature and such. Okay, they might retain the same, but the performance is superb. Let me just show you. Okay, I will pull out all the stats as required. Now do bear with me as I need to do all this step by step. Oh, forget the Polarizer Master. When doing PBO settings, right, I always forget to pull the Ryzen Master first for some reason. Okay, anyway, Ryzen Master is out. Then I will pull Ada 64. As I already explained to you why I'm doing this, because the stat doesn't tally, some of them doesn't tally, and I hope that ASRock will do something about it. Okay, probably I'll write a letter to them asking them to fix the problem. Alright, now coming to this, and okay, where is my okay, then I will run this firm to have the second stats. Now I'm not going to talk throughout this whole 10 minutes. Alright, again, weakness yourself. Things to take note: the CPU power drawn, and the base clock, and the base frequency, and the rest like the temperature. You can look left, look right, up to you. Okay, and the SoC voltage, make sure you look under here. This is more accurate. Okay, the voltage. In fact, it will not go anywhere because I've locked it. Alright, here we go. 10 minutes, and I'll talk about it on the last 3 minutes. Here we go. Alright, the last 3 minutes. Right now, I'm just going to write down the stats again, or should I say collect all the data. Starting off with the CPU temp. As I mentioned to you, see, it doesn't really drop that much, based on the fact that I know that this board is rather aggressive. Okay, right now it's 71.6, I guess. Okay, no drastic changes or such. You should retain almost the same, but the performance is different, where I will show you. Now looking at the motherboard is 43, which is the same as previous. And the VRM, which is listed over here, 46. See, as I mentioned, this board is rather aggressive. As I'm feeder with other boards, right, this will decrease the temperature. Anyway, the DDR5 39 over here. Okay, I'll just put 39, which is the same. Okay, I'm just going to copy this over, and for the M.2, 34 degrees Celsius. Okay, that's good. And for the power drawn, or should I say CPU power drawn, is 114. It drops by 5 watt, which is a good sign. See, after you've done the PBO2, right, and the curve optimizer and the curve shifter as stated over here, it drops on the power drawn, which is a good sign. And looking at the max boost and the base boost and the max boost, right, they are the same, which is 5.215 gigahertz. Okay, the max boost is the same. And why do I like this is, look at the consistency. The line is flat, and the dips are not so often as compared to the default. See, and this is especially good when you load games or when you load application, because there won't be a certain push in frequency, right? When the application cannot catch up the frequency, right, you just crash and such. So this is good. For me, it's good, especially for work. But for games, I believe you can have it spike, not a problem. As in, like, to push the frequency, or sometimes it might crash. I'm not too sure because I don't really play games. But for me, right, work wise, this is good. Okay, gonna wait for the scores in no time. But in the meantime, I'll write all this down, which is similar. But instead of having it to auto, right, I've keyed in all these figures in. Okay, just waiting for the score. Now, throughout the whole exercise is to have a better performance and to reduce down the CPU power on this motherboard. As I mentioned to you, right, the rest, right, are rather aggressive, so that's why you can't see any drastic change when I do the curve optimizer and such. probably you can push, let's say, curve optimizer to -30 and such, or the curve shaper, right, set it instead of -50, -10, -5, right, you can set -20 and such. But in general, I just want everyone to have a working system. That's why I place all this as moderate figure. Now with this say, right, I'm just going to punch in the score, which is 22758. Now looking at the stand, see a big leap on the score, which is about 1000 more, which is good. And another thing is that, another thing is that I noticed, based on the power drawn, right, over here, it drops drastically. Not say drastically, but 5 watt, it means a lot. And your processor will be happier, right? Now, another thing is that I am also very particular during the pull. Okay, let me just press one more time. Okay, as for the score, right, as mentioned to you, is a big leap. Now, my stats over here does not lie, neither on Cinebench R23. See, this was the score after the previous, which is the default, and it does pretty well. See, the scores are over here. Now, as I've noticed, right, from the CPU power drawn, right, I noticed on the PPT and the TDC, it's drawing around 85 to 84. And the EDC, right, in fact, is underutilized. So what I normally do, right, I would tune the last figure, which I will show you right now. So I'm going to touch on the EDC and see what happened on the overall. And I know that when I do this, right, the performance on the score might suffer, okay, but the rest might be the same, except for the CPU power. So I'm just going to show you guys what's going on. You can choose to have that setting, I mean the setting that I'm going to set right now, or you can just leave it as this, right? This is, in fact, to me, is very good. I don't have to worry about, you know, killing my processor because it's running according to specs, and the SoC voltage is below 1.2. Okay, back to UEFI. Now, of course, I can't answer as in like to solve the mystery as in why are so many 9800 X3D being killed by ASRock Board. Okay, I can't tell you that, but you can do prevention. And if you guys choose to continue to use this board, right, use it safely. That's all I can tell you. But with this prevention, right, you should not be a problem, because I've been using this board most of the time, be it on my 950X 3D or 950X. And right now, borrowed a loan unit which I've tested for almost 2 weeks, and it's still working. Maybe not the duration of time, but you know, as I show you, right, these are the precautions that you can take. Alright, now back to the advanced mode AMD overclocking. As mentioned to you, I noticed the percentage on the PPT and TDC. So right now, I'm just going to set only one section, which is this. I will pump this as 143 ampere. As I mentioned, it's underutilized. So hopefully this will bring better CPU power, and also, you know, performance might not drop that drastic. I hope. This is just my instant calculation that I wanted to do, okay? In fact, I should skip this part. It's just that I look at it, I feel uncomfortable with the percentage, because I often like to do PPT, EDC, and TDC, right, of a equal percentage, because that will be the equilibrium and of stability, and never hit above the graph of red. The color red is always on yellow. Okay, let's see what this will do. Again, I'm just going to run 10 minutes and we'll show you the results after. Okay, just going to pull this down, run this. I hope it captures. Alright, it does. Okay, 143. Okay, probably I just write this down first. The last set, which is the same thing, 120 ampere, and the last set is 143 ampere. Now, often using AMD system or Intel system, right, be it either way, right, I like to have full control as in like what I have plot in, and I'm sure that the system is running safe and sound. This is the main objective when I have a system. Okay, we just say, right, okay, where am I? Loading this. Okay, pull this one side. I can minimize this, and to align this. Okay, as mentioned, 10 minutes run. Let me just expand this out. Run firm up. Okay, again, I'm just going to run 10 minutes, and the last 3 minutes I'll talk about it. As mentioned to you, my prediction, right? Okay, I've not done this, alright. It's just that I look at the percentage. That's what I feel like doing. Is instant. I have not done this. I'm just estimating. It might hurt the scores, but I think it will bring down the CPU power. Okay, let's see what happened. I'm just going to reset this, clear this, and to run. So here we go. We'll talk to you guys the last 3 minutes. Alright, last 3 minutes. I'm just going to take down the stats again, or should I say record on the stats. As you can see, the temperature right now is 71 degrees Celsius. Or should I say 70? Okay, I just put 70.5. Then for the motherboard, 43. Over here is 43, which is the same. Okay, probably I just copy here. Then for the VRM, 46, which is the same. My two RAMs, 39, is the same. And my M.2, oh, it went up by just one degree. Pretty alright, not so drastic. And the drawing wattage, 111 to 112, or 1110. Okay, I just put 112. And the base clock and the boost clock is the same. And the score, which I will wait. Now, while waiting for the score, right, take a look. This is also very consistent, but it's slightly jagged. Okay, my prediction was quite correct, as in like by setting this right, utilizing it more rather than underutilized, right? As you can see here, the percentage over here, right, is 84, 83, 82 around there, and this is 74. This is giving a very good stand, whereby it did push down the CPU power. As you can see, the max, okay, right now is 111, 112, or 113. It doesn't go beyond like what you see when I have not reduced the EDC, which is 114. Now, leaving on the results, I would predict that based on this, this line over here, right, the score might suffer a bit. Probably I would say around 100 or so. But overall, if I am to choose, okay, probably I'll wait for the result before I talk about anything. But as I can tell you that either you can set it this way, the default, plugging in the PBT, TDC, EDC based on the default, and to run all this configuration, the figures, which I told you that everyone can make use of this, and to have these results, not an issue. It will give you a smooth run, that's for sure. And even after you've done the tweak on this, right, and to plug your graphic card, no issue, it will just run. And later I'll show you something fantastic. Okay, that's why I say that right now I'm stressing the CPU. Imagine that you plug in your discrete graphic card. That will be a different story, because the stress is on your graphic card, not on the processor. And with that said, right, even at full load, right, take a look at the current drawn. Okay, you'll be amazed. Okay, 22671. See, I'm right. Okay, probably I should highlight all this. See, looking at the stand, the score did drop. As I mentioned to you, probably about 90 or 80 or 90 around there. But I get a very good CPU power drawn, which is at 112. Recommended is 120 watt, and this is 112. Now, I will not stress to pull any further based on the fact that looking at the recommended speed, right, from AMD, the base clock is 4.7. In fact, I say that this board is rather aggressive based on the fact that when I run the default, right, I look at this. Most of the motherboard that I've done, right, on default, right, is either running on 4.9, 4.8 or 4.9, but this is running on 5 gig. So that's how aggressive this board is. And with this say, right, having all the settings that I've done here, the moderate settings, I'm pulling way ahead. See, off from 4.7 is right now 5.215. Same goes to this, the max boost. No, the max boost is actually stay on target. I'm talking about the base clock. So at consistency, right, it's actually running on this, which is a good sign. Now, something to show you. You might say that, oh, Cleo, you have done all this. How come it's not pumping down the CPU power? As mentioned to you, I stress on the graphic. I mean the integrated graphic. I'm just going to shut this down. Take a look. Just with this, okay, I still can pull the stats using this. Okay, without firmware, I'm just running this alone. Take a look at what happened to the CPU power. Now I'm only stressing on the processor, not the integrated graphic together with the processor. How safe it is to run at 95 watt. So this is actually what I meant. So as you can see, right, if you were to plug in your graphic card, the stress is on your graphic card and not the processor. That's for sure. That's why on, you know, hardware info, right, you have this section here. Okay, let me just open up everything. Let me just find that. Okay, where this one. So you tell you that the core, the SoC and such, right, is drawing this much. Alright, SNI. The your memory SoC voltage, your core voltage, plus the miscellaneous power like your M.2, your RAMs and such, is drawing this much voltage. With this, right, you can comfortably run this motherboard. Okay, safe to run. So this is actually what I meant. So with this said, I hope you guys have actually learned something, and as I mentioned to you, right, this is just a precaution. It's not for you to think that, you know, things might not happen. Okay, this is just a precaution. SNI, prepare beforehand, knowing all the stats that you're doing in your motherboard. Okay, understanding that, okay, how it pulls the power, what must be done and such. Don't just follow blindly. Everyone was saying that, okay, pull your PBO limits to motherboard, and you just pull and just go blindly. I've already shown you for the very first start. Okay, before I set any PBO2, if you were to just, I know that for most PC builders and users, right, who do not know about this, right, when they jump off from Intel to AMD, right, they will just pull the Expo profile and will just install applications like, you know, OS and such, right, and without knowing that at the background you're drawing so much power. So that's actually not healthy. And you also can argue to the fact, hey, cool, you are showing the processor together with the integrated graphic. Now that is drawing 138 watt. So imagine that if, let's say, I were to cut down the firmware, right, it probably will still pull around 122, 123 and such. Is still not very healthy. So it's best that you have full control of the system before you perform any installation or any tweaks. With this said, I'd like to thank AMD Singapore to have provided the 9800 X3D processor, and to King Banks to have sent me, though there are two sets, I only make use of one based on the fact that it's of a higher bus speed and such. Thanks to them to have provided two sets of King Bang RAMs, and to ASRock for providing the board. And if you are new to this channel, welcome to my channel. If you like my content, do remember to subscribe and to click on the notification bell button, and don't forget to like this content if you find this useful. With this said, till the next time, take care, goodbye, see ya.